Okay, welcome. I do usually skip Friday's reading. I skip it because usually I have to go into work a little bit earlier on Fridays, and it just does not leave me enough time in the morning. But I have kind of a relaxed, chillax day. I just have a meeting in like half an hour. Um, Relaxed, chillax day, going through a bit of a transition. But that is all I will say on that note. So we have a little time to go over this short reading from Exodus today. And as you know from yesterday, we discussed the laws, right? I think the main one with my audience that strikes chords, or the main ones, is anything that's like misogynistic, or what we would think of as misogynistic, or singling out males versus females. Those sort of things I think strike a lot of chords with my audience. But as I've discussed before, the frame of mind and the reference that we need to keep is not that it's misogynistic, but more the fact that it's protecting. So again, I think the law was, women servants or female servants aren't meant to go free like their male servant counterparts. And again, like, they're just supposed to be under the guide of like their parents, or their husband if they have a husband, or their master, right? If they don't have a master, they need to kind of find one of those three roots, just so they're protected. We've talked about that before. The mode of singling out women or making certain things only for women is not to control them or not to manipulate them in any way. It's a service of protection. Because imagine like a woman today, if she doesn't have a husband, if she doesn't have a job, if she doesn't have parents that look after her, what do you think is going to come out of that? And I can tell you from personal experience, it's not good, right? I mean, it's just a lot of things that can happen as far as risk-related issues. You get a lot of male attention being a single female, so it's not the most pleasant life as just like a free woman. And of course there are exceptions, a lot of free women doing their thing. Maybe they're successful, right, and have a job that looks after them and takes care of them, but still, if you don't have any one of those three categories, you're kind of being thrown to the wolves in a very real sense. So that's just what I wanted to clarify on those laws. Some of them might seem ridiculous, but they apply for a good reason. And again, we don't use this verbiage and these terms today, but a lot of these concepts still apply today. That's why it's still relevant to go over them. So we're going to learn now. Let me open up with a quote just so we can understand what we're talking about today. Short quote here, again by Adine from her Shorts Part 2. A poet's hope to be like some valley cheese, local but prized elsewhere. So this is the hope of a poet, to be, just local and hipster and homegrown, but it's famous somewhere else. It's prized, it's renowned, maybe in the Whole Foods across the country, right? So this is interesting because I can kind of compare this local, homegrown cheese to the Israelites in some strange way. We can say, yes, they're God's chosen, locally homegrown people, right? They are the chosen people. They are the lineage of Abraham. And but they're not really wanted anywhere. I mean, after they escaped from Egypt, they're kind of on their own. They're kind of in the desert, roaming around, trying to settle with 600 plus thousand people, nearly 1 million people. So the surrounding communities do not want to take in 1 million people. They're like, no, our land will not support that many people and livestock and civilization. So they're trying to find their own place, but it's very hard to, because a lot of the established land and grasslands for like livestock feeding aren't really where they are occupied, right? They're occupied, so they're really on their own in the desert. So the Lord is thinking of a solution, right? These people are prized elsewhere. People do not want them a part of their land. They want them to go find their own promised land. But the caveat of this is the lands, like I said, the promised lands are already occupied. This is like something that's also kind of interesting. We think of the promised land as like a land that's all their own. It's like, no, God said in the beginning that this land was already occupied by the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites. It's not something that's like a free open land that they can just take without force. So that's one thing that we did mention before, and we'll go ahead and bring it up again in this next section here. So let's go ahead and begin. See, I'm sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and bring you to the place I have prepared. Right? It's already prepared. It's already established. It's already moved into. But he says here, my angel will go ahead of you to bring you into the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Classic God move, as we learned, as we know, this is a classic God move. Very interesting to see what would happen between now and then, but we don't really hear too much else about this. But he says, I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn your backs and run. Turn your backs and run. All your enemies turn their backs and run. Little by little I will drive them out before you, until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. So this gives a little bit of a idea about the time frame, right? He's saying little by little. He's not just going to send a disaster or something of that nature and wipe them out altogether. He is just going to slowly integrate these groups of Israelites kind of just away, right? He's going to move them out some way or another. We're hoping we get to learn a little bit more about how this takes place, but I'm sure we will in later books. But he's giving it a time frame, and he says, until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. So he, in God's mind, the group of people is large, but it's not large enough for them to just take over all of these other tribes, because there's multiple other tribes here, which I'm sure are great in number as well. So he's taking his time. God is planning like a timeline for these people, and he's preparing them in more ways of one, which we'll talk about the next few days here. But he says you need to grow in number. You need to multiply more. You know, the little kids need to become grown and large warriors for you to be able to do this. But again, he's kind of doing a call of war in a way. But yes, he's driving them out little by little. It's not going to be like a God handled disaster, right? Not something like in the beginning of Exodus with the Egyptians. But then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, we will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey. So again, he's prepping them with these rules and these laws. He's like, you need to be in your tip-top condition. You need to be spiritually and morally tip-top. You need to be on your best behavior, because what's happening is a transformation. And when anybody transforms for the better, old habits need to die. Old vices need to die. So this is exactly what the Lord is doing. He's preparing them spiritually, emotionally, morally, really, again, with this character building, just trying to build them up to be the most righteous people, essentially. And there's more ways than one to do this. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and stay here. I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction. So the Israelites, to the Israelites, the glory of God looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Alrighty, so this is kind of a turning point here. Moses is retaining these tablets that are actually written in stone by the Lord. We wondered how these tablets were actually engraved with the Ten Commandments, right? Like what tools did they use? I'm sure the Israelites would have, could have done that as well. But the Lord actually, that is something that is a heavenly relic, and he actually passed down. So it wasn't something that Moses created or the Israelites created, even though I'm sure they could. But the Lord actually gave him these stone tablets already inscribed with the rules, right? Which is very interesting. I wonder where they are now, right? I wonder does somebody have them? I haven't heard of anybody having these, but again, it's a heavenly relic. So that's an interesting point. And then, of course, this part here where Moses is staying up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. These next two chapters, we're going to talk about everything the Lord and Moses discuss. And it's going to be a talk of cleansing. It's going to be a talk of just getting rid of all the old sin. before Jesus was around, this was the way to get rid of sin, and this was the way to do it. And the Lord is instructing Moses on how to do this. Again, it's kind of like a test to see how loyal the people will be, especially with Moses gone. We'll see what happens there. And it's just, a way of, building the people. I'm not trying to say building. Cleansing is a great word. Cleansing and molding is a good word. Molding the people in the correct way. God wants something for himself. He wants something to be like, this is what I've implied, and this is what I have done. Because up until now, there wasn't something like that. There wasn't something where God said, you're doing this for me, right? He kind of gave everybody free will, which has kind of not really worked in his favor in the past. It's kind of been a disaster in most cases. Everybody's free will really was free, and things went haywire. So the Lord is actually putting in instructions and putting in just like tasks for people to do. So he has something for himself, and he's testing their obedience, and he's testing their work methods and things like that, their work ethic, right? Work ethic, obedience, cleanliness. He's testing all of that at this time. So when the Lord is conversing with Moses for 40 days and 40 nights, we will learn about what he says to the people tomorrow. I'm going to go into a bit of a longer reading tomorrow and Sunday, and we will go ahead and discover what the Lord is telling these people to do. Of course, you can read ahead and find out, but that's no fun. We like to have the conversations together. But yes, without further ado, peace. Have a good Friday. Enjoy your days. Bye-bye.